It is rare for a noble to marry someone out of love. A woman is getting married and a ring is put on her finger. She thinks to herself that most sons of wealthy families have had their marriages arranged since they were young. Most of them marry for the sake of their families too. She has never been truly happy about it. About this marriage, the man says Yumimi and the woman says Demayon. She says to herself that soon after graduation from the academy, here she is on her wedding day. To strengthen the bonds between their houses, to strengthen magical powers, and to be a vessel for better bloodlines for future generation. Lord Demion's family is prestigious. She is sure the average noblewoman would consider it a great honor. But she did not hone her magical powers to marry into the Larkin family. She was meant to use this power to join the Order of Knights as the first female knight. That was the future that was supposed to be waiting for her. King Clodius of the Kingdom of DeForge says, "May the future of two young people who will be the foundation of their country's prosperity be glorious." The people smile and say the Majesty spoke. Yumimi thinks to herself that His Majesty himself choosing a marriage partner is something that would not normally happen. That is why this marriage is so special. King Clodius says, "Demon Larkin, Yumimi Delacroix, your hands, both of you." They hand out their hands and he holds both of them and the king uses his spell. A mark is left on their hands. In marriages between nobles, a couple seal is where the husband and wife are given a seal of succession. But this is not the norm either. Yumimi looks at her hand and asks herself, what are these thorns? There were not thorns like this in her mother's seal. Yumimi says no, this must be the king's blessing magic. But why? It is such beautiful magic. She does not know why she is so anxious and afraid. But her fears are confirmed. This marriage is her future, and the beginning of the end of her life. In Larkin's palace, a slap is heard. Demayon says good or stupid as he can see her not doing what he tells her to do. All His Majesty wants from this is his continuing the Larkin's bloodline. That is why she is just a tool for him to wave. Yumimi says that it was not long after the wedding that he threw away his kind-faced personality as a husband. Yumimi screams that even if it is a political marriage, it is not right that one of the spouses should be in a lower position than the other. It should not be like that. Demayon yells at her to shut up as he makes a fist. Yumimi thinks to herself, if he is going to hit her, then she will use some defensive magic. Yumimi realizes it is not working. She asks herself, wait, why? As she gets knocked down to floor. A vase is broken as Demayon starts hysterically laughing. Yumimi looks at her hands, asking herself, why did not the defensive magic work? Normally it should have worked. Demayon says that since the moment he met her, he always thought her magic was very strong. Let it is leaking out. He cannot help but think of it as unpleasant. Is she trying to brag about it? Yumimi asks what? Demayon says, and he guesses she wants to teach the Larkins a lesson. That is why he gave her that ring. Yumimi looks at her ring and says, His Highness Demayon, no way this. Yumimi realizes it does not come off. Demayon laughs and says there is no way it can come off. She is so stupid and foolish. This ring absorbs the magic with its dark power. Even if her magic is at peak, no matter how much she uses it, it will not let her. Yumimi is flabbergasted. Demayon says, alright. By the way, he will give this too. Ring of Darkness, grant his wish. Take this girl's feelings too. Yumimi says what her head hurts. Demayon says even if the ring suppresses her power, it will never disappear. And even if her mind is blank, pregnancy is still possible. His Majesty the King wishes for him to have a child. Now that it has come to this, they are ready to proceed. Yumimi thinks to herself that no, she has to run away from here, but the ring is taking her consciousness away. If she loses, it is over. She has to do her best so it will not completely steal her. If she loses her magic in this house, she will be a mistress, not a wife. She will continue being treated as trash. The maid says they do not like that gloomy face. Lock her up in her room, she is useless for the time being. Does she understand her position? Yumimi glares at them and walks away. The maid says, what is the matter? She just ignored them. What does she mean? For a woman who has the habit of being decorated as a wife, does not she need some discipline? The maid with a grin on her face says she is a useless woman, know her place, as she shoves her off the stair. Yumimi hits her head and is laying on the floor while bleeding. Yumimi thinks to herself that if only she could use magic, she is sure these injuries would be minor. She cannot think straight because of the cursed ring. She is forced to live as if she is a puppet. She does not think her family would have ever imagined, even in their wildest dreams, that she would be treated like this. The parents say that she is the pride of their family, while the siblings say that Yumimi is the best sister. Her precious and loving family. The Larkins family manipulated even that love from a house. He imitated her handwriting with magic just to get money support. Anything addressed to her is taken away from her. It is frustrating, painful. She hates everything. Surviving as a tool just to give birth to children, she would rather run away to her death. Even her freedom of her feelings is taken away from her. The maid says no way did she die. The other maid asks if she pushed her off. The maid says she just did it unconsciously. The maid yells that if she dies the family will not be able to get their money. But what are they supposed to say to His Highness Demayon? The maid says that they will have to pretend that thing fell down on her own. Anyway, just go report to Demayon that they found her like this. Mimi thinks to herself that she wonders if she will die. She gave up her own most precious dreams. A magic spell spiral fades away and Mimi says she should have left a will at least. Thank God. Mimi closes her eyes and thinks about how the moment she is dying she remembers her happiest memories. Her days at magic school. A man asks what will Mimi do after she graduates. Mimi says of course she will join the Magic Knights. She will show him. She will make her name as the first female knight. That is her dream and goal. Fred, what about him? Fred says me too. Because he entered this school. His goal is to join the Magic Knights. He hopes Mimi will be his lieutenant or something like that. Mimi says that is my line. Mimi thinks to herself, oh so nostalgic Fred, and she talked about their goals and dreams in those days. The times she spent with him were very nice. Fred says hey Mimi. He about her. Mimi thinks to herself that was a precious and irreplaceable time. Even after she graduated she continues to want it. Mimi wakes up and asks herself where is this? She does not know this place. It hurts. A woman walks in saying it seems his wife's consciousness is back. Demayon says Mimi she has woken up. Mimi asks herself who are these people? Mimi asks herself who these people are. Demayon with a grin on his face asks Mimi. Mimi questions who are these people? And how did she get injured like this? Both Demayon and the woman are left shocked. Demayon asks Mimi does she know where this is? Mimi says it is clear that this is not the Dracoroy mansion. Demayon says what? And the woman whispers to him saying Lord Demayon, could it be? Could have lost her memory? Demayon asks Mimi what time does she think it is right now? Mimi is confused and she thinks to herself why are they asking such a question? And calling her you even though it is their first time meeting? Mimi says that she has graduated from the academy but it is not yet the day of her induction into the Magic Knights. She thinks. Demayon says I see. Mimi asks herself if she said something wrong? She definitely took the entrance exam for the Magic Knights. She was eagerly awaiting the results. Wait, come to think of it, did she ever hear the results? Demayon says for someone who is lazing around sleeping, she sure can make absurd statements. You useless, worthless failure. Mimi is startled and Demayon says well whatever. He yells that until she remembers throw her into the basement as usual. Do not give her any food or anything else. Mimi thinks to herself why did he say that? Did he really say he is going to throw her into the dungeon with injuries this severe? The woman says Lord Demayon, if she may. Demayon says what? Is she defying him? Mimi thinks to herself thank goodness this doctor seems to be on her side. But the dungeon that is just too much. The doctor with a grin on her face says at the very least, she needs to give her some water. She will actually die otherwise. Mimi says why? What did she ever do to these people? Demayon says hurry up and take her away. The man approaches her and grabs her by her hair. Mimi scratches him and the man asks Lord Demayon if they can rough her up a bit before throwing her into the dungeon. Demayon says he does not care, do whatever he wants as long as she does not die. The maid says hey slam her against the wall. The men says got it. The man grabs her as she tells them to stop it. They drop her and Mimi says that if they keep this up she is going to be killed. She absolutely will not let that happen. She will not let them do whatever they want to her. The man says this one still plans to defy them? Should he break her leg too just like her skin? Mimi tells them to stay away. Do not touch her. As she uses her magic and hits them. Mimi says this is her original magic. It is imbued with a rejection effect that prevents anything she refuses to accept from approaching her. So they all cannot get past this shield. Demayon trembles while he asks why is she able to use her magic. Mimi says she is a graduate of the Academy of Magic. There is no way she would not be able to use magic. Demayon notices the ring and says wait, Mimi as he gets hit by her magic. Mimi says Lord Demayon, he is also included as a rejection target of the shield. Now all of you leave at once. Demayon says Mimi you will pay for this. As she glares at him. Yumimi uses her magic to shut the door and says now that she has calmed down she needs to heal these injuries first. She uses her healing magic and says alright, that should do it. Still, where is she? It feels familiar, but at the same time it does not. Yumimi notices a drawer where her original magic is placed. She asks herself why. Could it be she used to live in this house? Yumimi opens it and says this is her diary. To think it has been secured with such powerful protection magic. What on earth is written in here? Yumimi reads and asks, what is this? The diary says please help, she cannot take this anymore. Yumimi asks herself what on earth happened here. No way she got married to that Demion. Right after graduating from the academy? Then what was the point of all the blood, sweat, and tears she poured into her efforts at the Magic Academy? Were all efforts towards the dream of becoming the first woman to join the Order of Knights all meaningless? As Yumimi looks at the other page, she asks herself, what is this? She reads that her mind is not functioning properly because of the ring. Her thoughts, her magic, and even her reasoning are being sealed away. Also, the recent meals have been strange. The taste is odd, unlike anything she has eaten before. It is unpleasant. Yumimi asks herself, her magic and everything else it is taken from her? Unforgivable. Yumimi notices something. This part. It is written with magic, not ink. The maid? The door gets slammed open, and Yumimi asks her barrier was broken? The man says, oh my, what a useless mistress. Trying to mimic a barrier without any real magical power. She cannot even use magic properly. Why is she struggling in vain? Yumimi thinks to herself, these people. They have not realized she has regained her magic. Yumimi yells that let her make this clear. Her only roles here are to bring money from their family and to produce children. Their will is unnecessary. Yumimi uses her magic and smiles while saying, by the way, how does he define useless? The butler is confused and thinks to himself, how could it be the ring? Yumimi asks would she kindly explain it to him? The maid screams that this is something given to her by Lord Demion. Who does she think she is? The maid grunts and says after stealing the position she wanted the most, Lord Demion's wife, she repays kindness with betrayal? She asks herself, could this maid be? The maid says that she will just have to hurt her again and remind her of her place. This time she will drag her back to the stairs herself. Mistress. Yumimi eyes open wide as she realizes that counts as a confession. Also, this is self-defense. The maid rushes towards her to harm her, but Yumimi just dodges it. She snaps her finger and her magic starts affecting on the maid. Yumimi says, hey, thanks for pushing her down. The maid screams, what? While she says now why does not she take the fall herself? The maid looks around asking, where is this? She spots Yumimi and says, you. The maid rushes to hers while thinking that it is her fault in the first place for standing there. She will push her off again. She gets close, but the magic takes effects on her. And she falls down to the ground saying, how dare she? She thinks to herself that it hurts. She will let that woman down with her. The maid rushes towards her but then gets pushed off the stair by her magic. The maid thinks to herself if this is the same barrier as before. The maid gets hit with the barrier again and she says herself that she has been forcibly teleported in front of that dirty girl. No way. Is she going to keep falling forever? The magic fixes one's consciousness onto the worst possible future for them. She imagined falling endlessly and trapped herself in that reality. The maid pants in pain. And Yumimi says unlike her all, she does not aim to take lives. The workers say what on earth is going on? She said she could not use magic, right? Yumimi thinks to herself that it seems these people only know the version of her that could not use magic. However, this is the true her, Yumimi Delacroix. Demion yells out, hey, what is with all this commotion? The doctor says how disgraceful. Yumimi thinks to herself how old of her to openly flaunt her lover like this. The doctor asks, is this what nobles do? Yumimi says the only repelled someone who approached her with murderous intent. It was self-defense. The doctor screams that is not the point. She is saying it is inhumane. Cannot she understand? Someone like Lady Yumimi who has only magical power would not. Yumimi thinks to herself, this woman. Even a woman with such a small title looks down on her? This woman, despite being a doctor. She was drugging her. To enhance the curse effect of the ring. The doctor comes close to Demion and says how convenient it is for her to call this self-defense. Demion says she really destroyed the ring, did not she? Yumimi says yes, she disposed of it. Now he cannot do as he pleases anymore. The doctor with a smile says as expected of the mistress. Even in such a dissociative state, her control over magic is impeccable. Yumimi thinks to herself, what is she talking about? Dissociative state? The doctor says as a doctor she does not allow using magic in such a state. Whether she allows it or not she will just use it anyway, says Yumimi. The doctor says she is truly sure of her words. As a doctor, she could easily crush her dream and her future. Mimi says crush her dream? The doctor says she is aware that to enter the Order of Knights, a medical health certificate from a doctor is mandatory, right? Mimi says such a fraudulent diagnosis. She uses her power to throw the piece of paper, but Demayon catches it. The doctor says this is an official document. She knows? The head of the Larkin family has approved it. Demayon says which means her so-called dream depends entirely on him. She had best behave herself. Mimi thinks to herself it is true, in an aristocratic society the authority of the family head is absolute. The doctor says by now replicas of this document are probably being made with magic at her clinic. Mimi nervously says replicas? The doctor says if this original were to be unjustly taken through magic, her subordinates could very well scatter the replicas all over town. Mimi gets nervous and thinks to herself if this document signed by the family head and doctor deems her unfit, she will not be able to join the knights. In an aristocratic society where bloodline is so important, this would be seen as a disgrace to the name of Delacroix. On top of that, the diagnosis cannot be taken by force using magic. It is a terrifyingly skilled way to blackmail someone. The doctor says she just has to behave, bring money from her family and bear children, because these are the only things she is capable of. Mimi trembles and says to herself she believed that if she regained her magic she could never lose. But strength alone is not enough. A few days have passed since then. In the end, she could not find a way to break through that blackmail. Now that she regained her magic, the servants barely treat her like a human being anymore. She is still trapped in this prison called marriage. But thinking about it another way, if she can just endure this, she can uphold the king's commands which no aristocrat can refuse. She will protect the honor of the Delacroix family and her beloved family as well. If she can endure this, she can protect everything. Mimi knocks at the door saying, "You called for her, Lord Demayon?" Demayon says it is not like he wanted to call her. He gives her an envelope and Mimi asks a direct invitation to a royal party from His Majesty. She thinks to herself they are playing the role of a happy couple, it seems. Demayon yells that they are only doing this because His Majesty wishes it. Do not misunderstand. Demayon goes on ranting and Mimi thinks to herself she will endure it. She will endure it no matter what. At the day of the king's birthday party, people talk about how much of they are a stunning couple, and yes, they are truly perfect match for each other. Mimi thinks to herself that is how they look at them, huh? Even though she feels like she is about to throw up right now, it is unbearable. Mimi says Lord Demayon she will step out for some fresh air. Demayon tells her to take care. The ladies talk about how they would like to speak with him as well, and ask if they could have a word with him. Mimi steps out saying she just wants to be alone. What is she even doing? Her confidence always came from her excellence in magic. She truly believed that with this power she could overcome anything. And yet now she is being suppressed by something she cannot overcome with magic. If she tries to solve this with magic, it will only cause trouble for the Delacroix family, and for his elder brother and sister as well. She is so tired. A voice is heard saying Mimi. Mimi thinks to herself, why is he here? Fred Salfinia says it has been a while, has not it? Her one and only best friend. They were truly supposed to be wearing the same uniform together. Fred dressed in the uniform the Knight Order she has always admired so much. And her who gave up on that dream and now wears an unfamiliar dress, just a decoration as someone's wife. Fred asks Mimi what is wrong. Mimi thinks to herself that Fred looks concerned. She has to smile properly and greet him back. Mimi starts tearing up and Fred holds her face, saying this is the first time she has seen her cry. Mimi is mesmerized. Fred asks Mimi what happened. Mimi thinks to herself that Fred was her classmate at the Academy of Witchcraft. He was the only one who had her back. People are jealous of her powerful magic. She did not really have anyone at the academy, but he was her only best friend. Mimi says the dust got into her eyes. Fred says liar. Mimi says what? Fred says for her to cry something serious must have happened. He cannot pretend he did not see it. Mimi thinks to herself, but still she cannot bother him. She can handle it on her own. Fred sighs and asks why does not she try to rely on those around her? Strength does not mean putting up with these difficult things. It's just being selfish. Mimi thinks to herself it is because he is her best friend that she is being so strong. Fred says he is just someone who wants to help his best friend. Tell him what is going on. Mimi says Fred he really has not changed at all. Fred says her stubbornness and overindulgences have not changed since her time at the academy either. Mimi says he really understands well, does not he? My best friend? Mimi does not know where she needs to start. Yumimi talks about how that she was forced to marry by order of His Majesty the King, that Demion, the head of the Larkin family, was allowed to do as he pleased, and that Demion has a mistress and she is being forced into a relationship with him. This is not the sort of thing she normally hears about in an aristocratic marriage. She only told Fred about it because he is the only one she can talk to. Yumimi says she actually was thrown down a flight of stairs and she lost a bit of her memory because of that. Fred is confused and said, "What in the world?" Yumimi tells Fred to calm down, it is okay. Fred yells that she can only say it is okay because she is safe now. What is she talking about? Yumimi says she is really okay. She wrote the important things in her diary and she fought back. Fred asks, fight back? Yumimi says she used her magic. That is right. She just made things a bit more tolerable. Fred starts giggling but then hysterically laughing. Yumimi says what? Fred says he is sorry, he just thought that it was so typical of her. But even with her magic there is something she cannot defeat. And that is the fact that he is using the medical report as a shield. Yumimi thinks to herself that is right, no matter how much magic she has. It does not matter. Fred says, but that method are not her quite experienced with it? Yumimi says that is a brilliant method. It is hard to imagine that she is the only one who had this experience. If they can show that the medical doctor produced are forgeries. Yumimi with a joyful look says the medical certificate she has written can be invalidated. Even so, who can they prove it? Fred says he thinks he can help her. Yumimi says she sees if it is the Order of Knights, they will be able to act freely under independent investigative authority. Yumimi says she has been so blinded. Fred smiles and she thinks to herself that having someone on her side, that is all the courage she needs. It is all thanks to Fred. Yumimi says, hey Fred, she is going to do something. Will he join her? As she extends her hand, Fred kisses it and says, as she wishes, his friend. Yumimi says it is amazing that he became a knight. The scene cuts to Fred thinking to himself that even if her best friend, it is not good for a married woman to meet alone with a man. Alright. Fred makes an envelope and says to a worker that he needs him to deliver this immediately. It is an official document. The worker says, yes sir. To which Fred thinks about Yumimi saying she does not remember that confession. She probably never wrote it down in her diary. But, Fred says, Commander, may he have a word? The commander asks Fred what is wrong. Fred says that they have received reports that a doctor is using magic to threaten people. Allow him to investigate. The commander says this is not the kind of things they have been looking for. How did he get involved? Fred says it is his friend, Countess Larkin, who is involved. She is a talented magician who wants to join the Order of the Knights. But her future is about to be sealed in the fact of a great injustice. Fred thinks to himself that if they took the exam together, her name was suddenly erased from the list of those who passed the exam. Yumimi must have been caught in some kind of fraud. Fred says if she joins the Order with her powerful magic skills, it will be great help for the Order too. The commander says for that purpose there is a need to expose the fraud, right? Fred says that is right. The commander thinks to himself that this is the first time he has seen this man show this much selfishness. The commander says if he insists, he will allow it. Fred says thank you as he salutes him. Commander tells him to keep him posted. Fred walks out thinking to himself that he will take out anything that harms her. She will stand by her no matter what. Noble marriages is a contract between two families. But right now, Yumimi is just being exploited regardless of that. Fred thinks to himself that she is a serious woman bound by an unfair contract. But he can free her from that view. He will be the one to save her. Yumimi thinks to herself that she has an ally by her side, and since that ally is Fred, there is nothing more joyful than this. Speaking of which, where is Demion? Is he still talking to someone? No way. The worker says he apologizes. The Larkin family's carriage has already departed with Lord Demion. Yumimi says okay, thank you. Yumimi thinks to herself, where did the pretense of showing them as a happy couple go? The worker says that he will prepare another carriage. Fred says there is no need. Lady Larkin, please use this carriage. He, the Knight of the Order, will escort her. Yumimi smiles and says thank you, she will take him up on his offer. The maid says please Lady Yumimi. Yumimi thinks to herself that the female apothecary is not a knight or someone of high status, but she makes use of her own strength, and it is wonderful. She admires her. In the Larkin family mansion, Yumimi says thank you, she has really helped her. The maid says it is her honor to be of help. Demion says her, of all people to seduce a man from the Order of Knights and return like that. Yumimi thinks to herself she is the one who left on his own without saying anything. The doctor says that a lady going home with an unfamiliar man in public. Yumimi realizes she let her guard down. Demion must have orchestrated this situation. In reality, even though she was with a woman in the carriage. What if rumors spread that she brought a lover with her? If bad rumors spread, it will become harder for people to believe her words. Fred will also be put in a difficult position. She is confused on what is with that calm expression. Demion says if she does not want to be labeled as a woman who flirts with anyone, she should stay quiet. The butler calls Demion out, and Demion is confused and says what the? A floating carriage comes in and Demion says it is impossible to manipulate magic with such a mass. Yumimi thinks to herself, could it be? As the carriage lands, a man steps out. He says, Yumimi, let them go home. The man is the head of the Delacroix family, Yumimi's older brother, Welder Delacroix. Fred says to himself he has been waiting for him. Yumimi trembles and says, brother? Why? Welder says that he received a message from Fred about her emergency. He is here for her dear little sister. Yumimi thinks to herself, Fred? Her brother? For her sake? She does not want to cause any trouble for her family. The doctor says, oh please wait. She needs to rest, she is a doctor. Welder thinks to himself that he cannot let this woman escape. The doctor says they have a doctor in their house. Welder says they do not need a local doctor like her. The doctor trembles and Demion says first of all, driving a carriage at night is outrageous. If his magic is cut off, it will crash. Welder says him. Who does he think he is? Do not underestimate him, useless fool. He is only worth their lineage. The Delacroix family possesses the greatest magical power in this country. For them, flying in a carriage is a simple task. Fred nervously thinks to himself about Lord Welder, the current head of the Delacroix family, and after several decades, the first to achieve the crown first-class diamond level. The sole possessor, Welder Delax. The noble hierarchy which exists separately from the titles. That is the magic crown. It is a family that excels in the strength and control of magic. The jewel is given as a ranking. It is a pure testament to power, independent of lineage or history. The one who can take the cornered Yumimi. The one who can take the cornered Yumimi out of here is not him. Not yet for now. Welder grabs her hand and says they have talked enough, let them go. Yumimi thinks to herself that if she leaves now, she could be going against the king's orders. If that happens, it will bring trouble to the Delacroix family. Yumimi says, brother. She is already a woman, married by the king's order. She already made up her mind. The brother says if she insists, he picks her up and says he will take her there with him even if he has to force her. The brother throws her in the carriage and says thank you for contacting them, the Order of Knights. Fred says it is only right that he tells him, Count Delacroix. In the Delacroix mansion, she thinks to herself she cannot believe they are flying all the way to their house, as expected of his brother. The older sister Elizabeth opens the door and says Yumimi. She hugs her saying welcome back my lovely sister. Yumimi says Sister Lizzie. She told them the whole story about what happened at the Larkin family. About how Demion impersonated her, funneling money to the Larkin family, and the situation where they had placed a curse on her as well. Lizzie says what in the world? And the brother says the Larkins are rotten to the core. Yumimi thinks to herself that she did not want to cause trouble for her family. She did not want to make her kind family hear about this and make them sad. Lizzie says thank you for telling them. She must be tired, go take a bath. The maid says this way my lady. Lizzie says that she believed that this marriage would be for her benefit. The brother says he thought so too. Lizzie says her dream was never about marriage in the first place. In the end, this is the result of imposing the happiness of a noble woman on her. Welder says the engagement with the Larkin family was said to be for Yumimi's benefit, according to His Majesty's words. So it was all a trick. It could have ended badly for their sister. As Welder slams the table, he says, but there is still time. Lizzie says that is right. She is not afraid of the king's order. She refuses to become a sister who cannot save her little sister. The brother asks Yumimi if she has calmed down, to which Yumimi says yes, thank you. The brother asks how about staying home like this. Yumimi is confused and Lizzie says it would be better if she lived separately, leave the rest to them. Yumimi thinks to herself that what strong and gentle eyes they have. The two of them are saying they will protect her, rather than focusing on their status as a noble family. But that is why exactly she. Yumimi says she wants to go back to that house. Lizzie says to Yumimi what is she talking about? Just keep living separately. She does not have to put up with it. The brother says yes, there is no need for her to go back to that house. Yumimi says to herself it is true that many nobles live in separate marriages, and if she stays here she will be able to live peacefully. Yumimi says thank you Lizzie, but separation does not bring true peace. She has decided that she will not hesitate anymore. She has a family that cares for her. They are important to her. Yumimi says that she will divorce Demayon, but there is something she needs to do in the house first. Lizzie says what? Divorce? Yumimi thinks to herself divorcing a known nobleman is unheard of. The word divorce has always been used by men against women. Besides, this is a marriage ordered by His Majesty the King. Yumimi says as long as she is married she cannot bear to be associated with Demayon. She says to herself she will do everything in her power to restore her dearest dream. And for that even if it means leading the Delacroix family. Lizzie nods and says if she needs are the divorce papers and the return of the family seal. The divorce papers need to be signed by 2 different people. She needs to find someone to write it for her. Welder says the wife's side must return the seal of the house. She has to make sure that the temple will accept the return of the seal. Yumimi says brother? Sister? Lizzie says she will look into the divorce papers from the wife's side, and the brother says in that case, he will go to the shrine and ask for their cooperation in returning the seal. Yumimi says can they? She does not want them to be. Lizzie asks what is she talking about? And the brother says it is fine. Yumimi thinks to herself that she was prepared to leave, but they accepted her completely. Welder says His Majesty told her to get married, but he never told her not to get divorced. Lizzie says everyone has their own definition of happiness. That is why Yumimi, do what she wants. Yumimi's eyes light up as she thinks to herself that before she was an aristocrat, she was just her. Yumimi says thank you. She thought that divorce initiated by the woman was a personal blow. No one should have to sacrifice their time for something they do not want. She will show them. She tells them to pack her bags, and Lizzie says it is the middle of the night. The brother smiles and Welder asks if he heard them. Fred says yeah, thank you for letting him get involved in this. Welder says they are taking advantage of the situation. He knows maybe Yumimi is not so fond of him. Fred says that is alright. Welder says what is he going to do about it? The Order is an organization under the king. Fred says he thinks he will not help him with Yumimi. If a pretext is needed, just create one. Yes, for example. Welder smiles and says they will work together. Shall they let Yumimi fly freely? He sighs and calls him a mad dog. Sounds good, Fred says. Welder says if there is anything the Order cannot help him with, just ask. For instance, they can provide him with information. Fred says understood. Welder thinks to himself, was his sister in love with such a troublesome guy? Even if he is a mad dog, he is an important force to make Yumimi's future a happy one. The maid says she is back. Yumimi thinks to herself that she came back here to get divorced and win back her future no matter what. Demayon screams Yumimi. How are a woman go home to her parents without permission? The doctor says she has no right to do what she wants. She will teach her that. Yumimi sighs and thinks to herself, why has she been so scared of these people up until now? Yumimi says, Dr. Almeria, what are you going to teach her? The doctor trembles and says what? Demayon says Almeria is the family doctor. She cannot treat her like that. Hey Yumimi, is she going to listen to him? It seems she has lost her hearing. Yumimi glares at them as her aura is getting released. The doctor trembles and says it seems she still does not understand. That it is up to her to make or break her future. If that is the way she wants to play it, she has got other plans. She will prepare her for a miserable life or death future. The doctor runs away and Yumimi thinks to herself that was quite a spectacular exit. She will just do what she has to do. Minutes after the commotion at the entrance, Yumimi looks out the window and notices something. The doctor is using a spell. She says that is, what the? Yumimi jumps out the window saying to herself to please let her make it in time. She jumps out of the window and uses her spell. The woman begs him and tells them to please take her to Dr. Almeria somehow. The knight says silence. A vagabond like her has no place here. The man is going to swing his sword, but a magic spell is used and the soldier is confused on what this is. It is Yumimi and she yells out that to think a knight would point their sword at someone they should be protecting. The knight flinches and Yumimi asks if she is alright. The woman asks for help and says if this continues she will be killed by Dr. Almeria. Her name is Sarah Pizzarador Harrion. Yumimi thinks to herself, the daughter of the Duke Harrion? One of the 4 great ducal houses of this kingdom? Yumimi says she is Yumimi Larkin, the wife of Earl Larkin. Why would someone of her stature have dealings with Almeria? Sarah says that she once dreamed of working as a civil official in the royal palace. However, the family head, her older brother, would not allow it. The brother says a duke's daughter working alongside mere municipal officials is utterly unthinkable. She must fulfill her duty and marry. Sarah says the man chosen as her fiancé is Duke Just of the Kingdom of Panova. A man who had taken multiple wives, all of whom met untimely and tragic deaths. If she marries Duke Just, what awaits her is death. But her brother does not care. It does not matter to him what happens to her. As long as marrying Duke just secures favorable trade deals, that is all he cares about. Using a false medical diagnosis fabricated by Dr. Almeria, her brother claimed she was too ill to work. He used it to block any escape route. Working in the royal palace was no longer an option. Even if she were to abandon everything and flee her home in this country, she lacks the courage to make that choice, so she came here to plead for the withdrawal of that diagnosis. Sarah whimpers and says even if pursuing a career as a civil official is deemed improper for a duke's daughter, she is not just a tool. Young Mimi thinks to herself that she is just like her. But unlike her, she has a kind family and a friend who lent her strength. Sarah says she knows it might be hard to believe with her saying all of this so suddenly. Young Mimi says no. She believes her, Lady Sarah, because she feels the same way. Sarah says what? Young Mimi says that she currently has people helping her, working to invalidate the false diagnosis. They are doing everything they can. She is not alone. Sarah says Lady Young Mimi. Young Mimi thinks to herself that she wants to join the knights. That desire came from wanting to help someone. She will save Lady Sarah, as well as herself. Young Mimi thinks to herself that this is quite an extravagant room she has here. If even the daughter of a ducal house has fallen victim to the doctor, the numbers of victims must be far greater than she expected. There might be account books or documents here that could serve as evidence. Yumimi's thoughts click and she realizes she was writing contracts using a magical quill. If she traces the magical remnants, Yumimi spots the book and says her methods of hiding things are rather sloppy, are not they? She notices something and says this is a certificate of authorization for a personal physician? At this point something like this is Young Mimi with a horrified face says that it is missing the head of the household signature in this section recognizing the Larkin family's personal physician. The system for hiring a personal physician involves a magical contract between the physician and the noble family, ensuring the physician's knowledge of family secrets. In return, the noble family provides their support as a guarantor for the physician. Young Mimi says yet after making her do all that, Demion never intended to become her guarantor. No matter how kind his outward demeanor may seem, he never truly trusted her. To him, Almeria is nothing more than a mistress tasked with handling the dirty work. She is desperate to earn recognition as a true personal physician by devoting herself to Demion. What a pitiable woman she might be. Young Mimi opens the drawers and notices this is the necklace mother gave her as a gift. To think she has so resorted to stealing as well. Dr. Almeria. Young Mimi opens the window and uses her spell and says she will bring an end to all of this herself. In the Harrian ducal estate, Welder walks in and maids start whispering about his diamond rank mage. A man yells out saying to brazenly barge into the duke's residence like this. How audacious, he thinks to himself, a diamond rank? And so what of it? The man says this lowly count family dares. Welder says please forgive his insolence, Duke Harrian. He thought it unlikely, but he has heard whispers of actions so egregious that they warrant a petition to his majesty. The duke says what? Welder thinks to himself that to think that a man who is so easily shaken by a single remark is the head of a ducal house. Welder says but a prestigious family like his must have its reasons. Surely there is some compelling circumstance at play. He sympathizes with his situation. The duke says yes. Exactly. There are so many things going on in his family. Welder says he thought as much. Would he mind explaining his situation? The duke says well, it is about his troublesome younger sister. As a noblewoman, should not she devote herself to the prosperity of the family through marriage? And yet she wants to mingle with commoners and work. So he paid a certain doctor a hefty sum. Thanks to that, his sister will remain a bedridden invalid until her wedding day. There is nowhere she can escape to. And her husband's family is an excellent trade partner. Magical tools can sell for an unlimited price in their country. Welder says by any chance? The duke says yes, while exporting them is forbidden in their country. It is worth the risk. Welder says that he is quite the bold one. The duke laughs and says he understands. Does not he? He has managed things well, marrying his sister into the distinguished Larkin family. Welder says him too, huh? The duke is confused and nervously took his name. Welder takes off his glove and says he thinks he is the same as a beast who preys on his sister's life. Is that what he is implying? He intended to confirm his guilt. But he is a fool who boasts of his atrocities as if they are achievements. He has saved him the trouble. The duke yells, what is he doing? He just told him. He asked him to explain his situation. Welder says he told him to explain his situation, but he never said he would let him go. The duke is pissed and says how dare a mere count speak to him like this. Welder says this fool. cannot even comprehend the magnitude of his magical rank. The Duke gets startled by his magic power and thinks to himself, so this is the power of the diamond rank mage. Magic strong enough to overturn even a ducal title. Welder asks Fred if he heard everything, did not he? Dispatch a search team to Duke Harion's estate immediately. Make sure not even a single ant escapes. Welder snaps his finger and a barrier is created around the mansion. In Almeria's clinic, Almeria talks about how reflective magic in a noble's mansion for no apparent reason, destroying the estate, causing emotional distress to everyone around. Alright, if she compiles all this evidence, she can legally confine that woman to the underground prison for life. As she gets up, Almeria yells out, "What?" Fred and his knights are standing there at the door. Fred says, "Dr. Almeria, she is under arrest." Almeria nervously asks, "Are they arresting her? Is that what they are saying?" Fred asks, "Why is she making such a face?" Identity fraud, forged medical documents, the list goes on, does not it? Almeria screams that what proof do they have for such accusations? She thinks to herself that she was only doing this because the nobles asked her to. There is no way this can be a crime. Besides, someday she will marry Lord Demion. There is no way she will ever be arrested. The knights wrap chains around her and Almeria yells out, "What?" and to let her go. Do they really think they can treat the Larkin family's personal doctor so rudely? The knight tells her to stop struggling and Almeria yells out that she said to let go of her. Mimi steps in saying, "Oh my doctor, what a lovely sight." Almeria screams that she is a mere decorative wife. She has no right to look down on her. She has been Lord Demion's personal doctor long before she arrived. Do not think of her as just some commoner. Mimi says, "Is that so?" She shows a piece of paper asking, "Even with this?" Almeria yells out the certificate of designation as personal doctor. Did she go through her room? Mimi says there is no signature on this, is there? She was never recognized as the personal doctor, there is not any signature here. The knight sighs and asks if she was lying about her status. Almeria screams and says to shut up. It is only because the process is not finished yet. Lord Demion said he loves her. Mimi asks if she seriously believes such nonsense. Almeria says it is not a lie. His parents' approval is all that is needed for the signature. Once they return from their trip, it will happen right away. Mimi says, "But is not Demion the current head of the family? The approval of the previous heads is not even required. He has no intention of recognizing her. She was merely being used." Fred says, "By the way, the person who filed the complaint against her has already been examined by another doctor. They are in perfect health. There is even a diagnosis report as proof." Almeria says that is because her treatment worked. There is no issue at all. Fred says strange asset transfers from specific nobles and fictitious accounts. There is more evidence if she would like to see it. Mimi thinks to herself that he really does work rather quickly, does not he? Almeria says, "Evidence? What of it?" She merely carried out the requests of the nobles faithfully. Almeria thinks to herself that exposing the crimes of nobles? That is not something the knight's order could possibly. Fred says if that is a confession he hears? Based on the accusations, they have already begun investigating the house of Duke Harion. Almeria says, "What? How does he show such disrespect to such a powerful noble?" Fred says there is nobody left to protect her. She will simply face the consequences as a criminal, Almeria. Almeria trembles and says that cannot be true. It is impossible. Think. She has to find a way out of this. Almeria says that is it, madam. Let them report Lord Demion's atrocities together. Surely there is no greater ally than her. She was just being used. Truly. She feels awful for what she did to her, madam. But she could not defy Lord Demion. Fred asks Mimi, "Lady Mimi?" As Mimi approaches her, Almeria says, "Madam, she truly is so kind." She vows to turn over a new leaf and pledge her loyalty to her. Mimi says there is no need for vows. Say, "My dear criminal." Does she really think she could ever trust someone who forges diagnosis certificates, kidnaps people, and even resorts to theft all for money? Mimi raises her hand and tells her to face the consequences for her actions properly. Almeria says to let go, and Fred thanks Mimi for cooperation. Mimi says not at all, it is her pleasure. She looks down and asks if this is her diagnosis certificate. She was quick to leave early, or was it to bring this forward? What an appalling report. Mimi says every one of these records belongs to someone. Fred says the sheer number here speaks volumes about her malice. Unfit for employment. Requires surgery. Hospitalization required. Mimi thinks to herself how many people's lives were upended by each one of these pieces of paper. Even with forged diagnosis certificates, If these were leaked, these could end up being misused all over again. The knight says that is an incredible amount, is not it? The other knight says just cataloging all the seized items will take forever. Yumimi says if it is alright with them she would be happy to assist. The knights are startled, saying how could they impose such a task on Lady Larkin. Yumimi she will be done in a minute if they will allow her. The knights are shocked and Fred says then could they leave it to her? Yumimi says of course, as she uses her magic. She makes a stamp on the pages saying seized goods are invalid for pressing further claims. The knight is shocked and says that is amazing, she controls her magic as if it were her own limbs. The other knight says such delicate magic manipulation and the sheer volume of magic is astounding. Fred smiles and Yumimi says here they go. The knight says thank you so much Lady Larkin. Let them continue the investigation. Yumimi says Demion used his relationship with her as a mistress to gain favors, but it is unfortunate they were not able to find any concrete evidence of misconduct. Fred says still this is a significant first step. Yumimi says he is right. As they bro-fist each other, the gates open and Sarah calls out Lady Yumimi. While Yumimi calls her out too, she thinks to herself there are so many others, are they all victims of El Maria? Yumimi says it is all okay now. As Sarah hugs her and sobs while saying thank you. She does not have to suffer anymore, does she? Yumimi thinks to herself that she is not doing this to be thanked. But even so she is happy she could be of help to them. A girl reads a letter and trembles while saying what did he say? Because of that woman, Lord Demion had to endure such hardships. How absolutely pitiful, she will ensure that all wicked women are erased from existence. Demion rages and says that woman, she humiliated him. Because of her, he lost Almeria, and it is now impossible to siphon money from the Delacroix family. That money, it was only natural for him to receive it in exchange for marrying her off. And yet that woman. Demion says wait, he sees that is it. Almeria is not the only woman madly in love with him. Demion rings his bell and the butler says he called for him. Lord Demion? Demion hands out an envelope and tells him to deliver this to Katia. The butler asks to Lady Katia? But Demion yells and says do the work he is paid for instead of arguing. The butler says understood. Demion thinks to himself those bastards, they still refuse to acknowledge him as the head of family. How dare they? Yumimi thinks to herself that a mistress's duties never end. There is no one she can rely on. But doing her job properly should work in her favor for the divorce. That being said, she is really exhausted. Yumimi walks in the hallway and opens the door only to see Demion drinking tea. Demion asks what is this? She really thinks a useless freeloader like her is entitled to tea? Yumimi says this morning she fulfilled her duties as the mistress properly. After reviewing the task of distribution, the mansion's upkeep has improved significantly. The servants seem to have noticed as well. Yumimi sighs and says Lord Demion, how does he typically handle things around here? The workers are shocked as Demion drops his tea and yells at her, saying a mere woman who is only married into this family has no right to speak arrogantly about their own household. Demion leaves and Yumimi says head butler, sorry but could he clean up the floor? The butler says yes. Yumimi sighs and says that she is going back to her own room. The maid says Lady Yumimi, shall she bring some tea to her room? Yumimi is shocked but then says thank you. The maid talks about how ever since Lady Yumimi became free, it feels like their work has become easier. The people who used to bother Lady Yumimi the most have quieted down, compared to Lord Demion. Lady Yumimi is, how should she put it, more proper. The other maid says Lady Almeria used to nitpick at them over little things, but Madame is still cold towards them. The maid says well of course. The butler says from now on they must atone for the wrongs they have done to Lady Yumimi, for the sake of House Larkin as well. Yumimi is mesmerized as the butler says would she allow them to assist with her duties? Yumimi thinks to herself all of a sudden what is this about? Regarding the work in the mansion, she does want to know how they have been handling things so far. But Yumimi says do they really think she can trust them this quickly? All of them get on their legs. Yumimi is flabbergasted and says a deep bow. It is not like the king is here? The maid says to please allow her to assist with the work. The other maid says they know how devoted Lady Yumimi is to her duties. At the very least they want to help make her time in this house as comfortable as possible. Would she please allow her to help? Yumimi is frozen by their apology, and the maid goes on by saying if she is uncertain she may even use magic to restrict their actions. Yumimi says there is no need to go that far. She thinks to herself that managing the estate, there are tasks that cannot be done without their assistance. Yumimi says if they ask her whether she can trust her immediately, it would be difficult. The workers look sad. Yum Emmy says but she wants to try and get closer. Just this once she will try believing in them, because their help is essential in properly managing the estate. The workers are very joyful and the maid says she understood. Please feel free to order them anything. Yum Emmy says do not forget those words. The butler says my lady it is the appointed time. Yum Emmy says thank you, please show her in. Lady Sarah says Lady Yum Emmy it has been a while. Yum Emmy says it is Lady Sarah. She is relieved to see her in good health. Yum Emmy asks how have things been since then. Has she had any troubles? Sarah says thank you for her concern. She was able to begin working safely as a civil official. Magic and all that she has learned she can finally put them to use in her life. It is all thanks to her Lady Yum Emmy. Yum Emmy says really? That is wonderful. Sarah says Lady Yum Emmy that couple seal. Yum Emmy is confused as Sarah asks if she can take a closer look. Yum Emmy says of course, is there something about it that concerns her? A maid barges in saying my lady pardon for her intrusion. Yum Emmy asks what is it? She has a guest right now. The maid apologizes but she must come at once. That person is beyond their control. Please. Yum Emmy asks herself just who on earth is.